Let's talk about how you play from both sides of the track when it comes to being a regular media feature and also a mediapreneur. And I know that we've been covering a lot around making distinctions between the two, and also I've been asking you to think about whether you want to really evolve into a mediapreneur, or do you want to use this experience within this series to up level your media presence and try some new approaches to how you get featured in the media so that you can be a consistent media feature. And I use both sides of the track, and I'm going to share just a few ways of how I do that. And certainly, you all are taking notes, so feel free to use some of the ideas that I share as well. So, as I mentioned earlier about the difference between a media feature and a mediapreneur, is that a mediapreneur has a business model that primarily consists of charging for their features, or their media empire is one that is set up to generate profits, and using the media as not just a component of the business, but seeing the media as the business and leveraging it in the marketplace in that way. Where with the media features, normally you're just trying to get more publicity and exposure, and you're thinking that that's what's going to help you to convert sales or draw more people attention to your empire. And what most are finding out is typically it doesn't work like that. The older model did have some benefits of that, how the older media paradigm in that model, that's how it worked for some of the legendary brands. And they're still using that model. And of course, in some regards, it still works very well for them because they've already been established. But for those who are emerging more into the new era media space, are seeing that you have to use some different methods of how you show up, and a lot of the traditional ways of doing things just will not cut it in order for you to be most effective. So when being a media feature and leveraging that even within the mediapreneurship model is, for example, I normally will get featured on a free podcast on an average of 2 to 3 times a year, or even every other year. And then I leverage the recordings by breaking them down into sound bites. Sometimes I create excerpts so that I can upload them into YouTube and they're on a specific focus. And I also leverage those recordings by sending them to event planners or bigger, um, speaking organizations or so, because that's the goal, is to leverage those in order to gain a larger speaking endeavor, so to speak, or a more high profile speaking endeavor. And I also do this with teleseminars and webinars as well. Now, I host online events and I do charge for those. I charge for virtual tours, and sometimes I create those into evergreen platforms. And how I'm still charging for those is because there are products on those platforms that people continuously are repeat buyers. And I've also charged for interviews and a number of things. I'm just naming a few things that you all can start to sort of wrap your mind around. I still do free mini media features with mini talks, and that's from anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes that add value to my audience, in addition to leading them into my brand or service, and sometimes even a product. And I leverage online podcasting platforms by recording series, and I create timeless archives with those. And I also host my radio blog tours twice a year. And I also use recordings from my podcast. And as I mentioned before, I create evergreen platforms, and I do that with these, create even evergreen promotions to continuously empower my tribe. And those are all free offerings that I, as I mentioned before, use to add value to the public and for prospects to get a taste of what I do. And I also leverage LinkedIn during a certain time of the year, primarily uh, winter, as my virtual media press room. I use it for a variety of things, but during that season, I typically use it for my virtual press room experience. And I create several article series on LinkedIn during that season, and I leverage them throughout the year as evergreen features. So there's a multitude of ways of how you can still be a media feature, so to speak, and build a mediapreneurship empire. And that's what we're going to get more into, the structure around that, the framework. And it's different for everyone. There is no one size fits all for being a mediapreneur. However, no matter what type of business or brand level that you have at this moment, um, where you see yourself, you really still have to make the shift of seeing your business as a media empire, because this is what's really going to catapult your success in the long run, so that you will be able to have long-term success as a professional. So this is very, very important. But continue, those of you who want to be media features and just consistently leverage that and get more opportunities and create momentum towards that, is definitely consider some of the aspects that I talked about, and continue to get yourself featured on a lot of different platforms, or continue to use your platform to gain more exposure, and also leverage LinkedIn. But from the mediapreneur perspective, he said that takes on a whole nother different business model, and even using podcasting and LinkedIn in some different ways for that. And we're going to talk more about that in this series.